Welcome in, everyone, to the official last episode of Beers with Mears for season 1. Season 2, we've got some exciting things in store, and I'm very excited to have you all following along and listening to that further closer to football season. But for today, we have Abby Chin, and she has been with NBC Sports Boston for over a decade now, covering the Boston Celtics. She has such a unique perspective on her journey as a sideline reporter and being the face of a network and being somewhere for so long. She talks a lot about what to expect of this new Boston Celtics team and how they could look a little different next year. She talks about her motherhood journey and being the face of a network while also bringing 2 children into this world at not really ideal times in the basketball season. So that was a cool thing as a woman to hear her perspective on that, as well as so much more. She is such a good conversation. You guys are going to have a lot of fun listening to her. For Win or Lose We Booze today, I'm going to give you a futures pick. And this is because the other day I was on the nightly sports call for Pittsburgh's CW. That's also something really exciting happening in my life, being a rotating guest on that show. So in my local hometown, super cool. I gave a futures pick on behalf of Picks and Parlays, saying that I think the Steelers team total will go over 8.5 wins. I love Kenny Pickett coming in this year without having a quarterback battle. I love the way his leadership established last year. They really built up the offensive line for him. On the defensive side of the ball, as long as TJ Watt and Cam Hayward are healthy, I think they'll be fine. They added a lot to that secondary as well. And if they have the offensive line, not just protect Kenny Pickett, but also open up the run game, that allows the Steelers offense to take leaps and bounds. I think with their schedule as well, I could go on and on about this forever, but we'll talk about that more toward football season. That would be one of my best futures picks right now. Mike Tomlin also has not had a losing season. And last year, somehow, despite all odds, the Steelers still had over that 8.5 win mark. So that would be my best futures bet. I'll drink to that. Ladies and gentlemen, Hard Knocks is rumored to be announcing the New York Jets for who they will be featuring this season. I'm a fan of Hard Knocks and getting to see the in-depth look at a team going through training camp, starting that season, where the cuts are happening. And why this is so interesting is because we now get to see an inside look into Aaron Rodgers and how he approaches training camp with a brand new team for the first time in a very, very, very long time, but also get to see what this Jets team is going to be made of, because we saw glimpses of hope last year. Now they have this amazing quarterback coming in here with this new perspective, bringing guys along with him. I'm so excited to get a sneak peek into this. So I will drink to that because I cannot wait. This might be the season of Hard Knocks that goes down in history as one of the best ever. This is some of the best reality TV that sports fans are going to get this season, in my opinion. But without further ado, I'm not going to do a beer review today. We're going to let our guest, Abby Chin, do that. So ladies and gentlemen, enjoy Abby Chin. Abby Chin, welcome to Beers with Mears. It is fantastic to have you on here, a powerhouse female in the broadcasting world. Abby's been the Celtics sideline reporter for NBC Sports Boston, right? So almost a decade now of your life spent here. So welcome. I'm so excited to dive into this.
It is crazy when you put it like that. Yes, a decade. And I am so excited to be here. I brought my own beer. I didn't know it's a local Lord Hobo.
Okay, yeah. Wait. So since you brought your own beer, I do something on Beers with Mears that's a beer review. So I want you to beer review your beer for us right now.
Yeah, so it's Boom Sauce, a double IPA. I prefer sours in general because I'm doing a craft beer, but this is what we had in our fridge.
Love it.
But Lord Hobo is a local company. They're awesome here in Massachusetts. The Boom Sauce, the double IPA, the 8% alcohol by volume,
right,
which is key for us parents, I would argue, here in the so it's good. It's really good. A double IPA, very hoppy, but not overwhelming, and somewhat filling, I would say too. In a good
what would you say a taste scale of 1 to 10 a taste would be?
A 7. I mean, it's noon right now, so I don't. Are we cracking beers? I can do that. I don't have to drive till 3, maybe.
I mean, I'm always cracking one.
Ooh, that one looks good.
But yeah. But no, okay. And then chuggability. So this is how the other way I judge a beer is off of chuggability. Would you be able to chug this? Is it 1 to 10, or is it just a little too hoppy for sipping a little bit?
Yeah, it's more for sipping. I think double IPAs are hard to chug, at least for me. I don't know. Maybe people out there, have those Scotch throats and they can just move it on. But no, it's not too chuggable for me.
All right, so maybe like a 1.5. for any of you out there, but we're not chugging any double IPAs on this noon of a weekday as well. But are you a beer girl then? Is that your preference of drink, or you said you like sours? So what's your drink preference on a day out?
On a day out, it is probably I'm really into bubbles at the moment. So I don't know, a prosecco or a bubbly rosé.
I love a good rosé, especially in the summer, like a nice chilled rosé by the pool. Sign me up.
So good. But then at home at night, it's just, red wine, Cabernet.
Cabernet. What about in Boston? So you're originally from Colorado. You were talking about, Coors Light down there with Rockies, yes. Right?
Yeah.
But in Boston, what are some of the best places to go get a beer during a game or enjoy a sporting event, or some of your favorite places you'd take people out to drink? What are some of the places I'd have to visit on my Boston list?
This is a difficult question for me. I am really lucky in that for Celtics games and around TD Garden, I'm inside the garden working. So I am not a good reference for that. I also have 2 young children. My daughter Mabel is 7 and my son Silas is 4. So I don't get out much. I can tell you that. But I do love going to a Red Sox game, even where they are right now, and Game On at Fenway, where you can see onto the field. You go down below. It's connected to the stadium. That I love for just a summer hangout. And then you can't go wrong. My favorite rooftop is at Envoy, which is a hotel in the Seaport. It's been around for a little while now, but you can do that. Or also the Legal Seafoods that is down in the Seaport. They have a rooftop bar as well that has amazing views and is perfect for summer.
Well, perfect. I love baseball and I love rooftop bars. So you gave me exactly what I would want. So I'm here for it.
I'm glad we can meet up. I'm happy to go.
I've never been to Boston, but every one of my friends that has and I've had a couple move there this past summer for work, or people that have visited always want to go back. They said they love Boston. So what is it about Boston that's so attractive? You had moved there yourself. So what do you think is so attractive about the city?
You're right. I'm a transplant. I moved in January of 2013. So we have officially been here for more than 10 years. The reason I like it is this is where I grew up. This is where I started a family. This is where I got married. And I have my dream job. So that's why Boston is home for me and has become home. But I can say from the moment I arrived, everyone is really welcoming. I think Boston gets and the Northeast in general gets a bad rap that people are very, I don't know, just kind of stuck in their own worlds. And I would say that, but I can speak from experience that once you're in, and they are loyal to a death. We saw that with Marcus Smart and the trade there, and just how emotional everyone got with that. And so once you're one of theirs, you're in for life. And that is a wonderful feeling.
Yeah, absolutely. Boston fan bases are insane. And we'll get to that. But I want to back up a little bit. So you said this is sort of where you got your dream job and where you got, that big break. So what made you want to pursue this? Have you always been a sports person with broadcast all the way back to the University of Colorado?
So I grew up watching sports with my dad, playing sports, but mostly I played soccer and ran track, not basketball specific. I'm actually really short in real life. People, when they see me, they're like, oh my gosh, I have to wear really big heels when I talk to the tall people. And then some of the 7-footers, they can't even get us in the same camera shot. But so I went to the University of Colorado. I did go straight into journalism, but even at the time, I didn't know that you could go straight into broadcasting and then go straight even into sports. I thought you had to be a newspaper writer, and then they, promoted you to get to do sports, and then they promoted you to do TV. So that was really eye-opening for me that you could just do sports. And I took a sports broadcasting class in college and obviously fell in love with it. I grew up watching sports, like I said, and so it was a part of me and my personality. I'm one of 3 girls. We all played sports our entire lives. I mean, didn't even think twice about it, that was weird or that we should be doing something different. And I owe so much of my personality and my self-esteem and who I am because of playing team sports growing up. So it felt like a really natural fit. And then so I fell in love with it. I did go to graduate school for writing newspaper journalism, and I did an internship at the Denver Post, and interns work all holidays and no matter what. So I was working on a Thanksgiving and I was on the city desk. We were listening to the police blotter. And I tell the story all the time. So there was an accident in the mountains and a member of a family died. They sent me to the hospital because it was a holiday. So that's, it's a big story. And I just couldn't bring myself to go into the room. We had their name, their information. The hospital probably shouldn't have sent me up to room 324, but I had all the information. And so they just sent me up there and I just couldn't bring myself to go in. And that was when I realized that sports were for me. If I didn't have, if I didn't have the balls to go into that room in that moment when everything was kind of on the line for me, I realized that sports was the way to go. And I'm not saying that it's any easier or anything like that, but it just showed me that my passion is going to be in sports and telling those stories.
That's funny you say that. I remember having a news class in college because like you had said, you never really knew you could go straight into sports. Yeah. You had to sort of cover the whole foundation of journalism, but they had asked us questions about what if you were in this situation and there was a car accident and this young kid sitting on the sidewalk and his parents had just passed, like, do you go up to him? What do you say? And I was like, I don't even want to be put in that position for this poor child, let alone have to ask them questions. I don't find that's appropriate at all. I was like, yeah, this isn't for me. I don't want to be. So sports that way too, very similar in that way. But after you had decided news isn't it, what are some of the steps then you took to get into sports?
So my first job out of college was as a production assistant at ESPN Classic. And that was the absolute best possible job that you can get in sports television. I worked from 9 to 5. I was an hourly employee, but for some reason still got health benefits and still got a 401k. So it was glorious. But the only reason that I got the job is because at the time ESPN was looking for diverse candidates. Mm-hmm. And I had submitted a resume 2 years prior for an internship, but my name floated to the top because I was a woman in sports and my last name is Chin. And so I don't shy away from that. I absolutely understand that is why that opportunity was given to me. And when my phone rang with 860 is the Connecticut area code, and I said, hello. And they said, can you be here Monday? And I was like, yes. I dropped everything. And I'm so lucky that I was in a position to do that. But I did the interview and then made the most of that opportunity. And that was really where I got my first glimpse of remote production and on-site and traveling for work and getting to see these big time events up close and in person. And my last year there, so ESPN Classic kind of dissolved and was absorbed into the bigger ESPN atmosphere. And that's when I went to remote and worked on NFL Monday Night Football. I also got to do a little X Games and the women's Final Four, which was really cool because at the time it was the only championship that was handed out on ESPN. So I got to do so many things there. And then, and it's just from being lucky and having my name picked out of a hat, basically. And then making the most of that opportunity, like I said. But then I decided that if I wanted to do on air, and I can just tell you, Hannah, my tape coming out of college, looking back, I'm so glad it doesn't exist. There's no record of it. It was so bad. And so
there is hope for some out there if you don't have this perfect tape out of college, right?
Yes, absolutely. Well, but like there was a 3-year in between there, and I went to ESPN, but through a photographer who I'd met there, I shot a brand new tape. But then from there, and that was when I realized that if I was going to do it on air, I wanted to do it sooner rather than later. I'm only getting older and who knows where the landscape was going to go. But that being said, Hannah, the only call I got from that new tape was from a sports director in Montgomery, Alabama. And the reason he called is because he also went to the University of Colorado. So small world, he didn't know me then. He, didn't know any of the same people that I did, but just saw that and that stood out. And then the only reason that I got that job is because I was going to move to Alabama anyway. My now husband, I met while we were at ESPN, and he had started a business with his brother who happened to marry a woman from Birmingham. So it was just the right time, for both of us to kind of move on to the next step. And so I don't think I would have gotten that job. I was part-time, making $9.50 an hour. And granted, this was a long time ago. It was in Alabama, but that is still not a living wage.
No.
So I was lucky to have the support that I did. But then, as it is with the business, we had a 4-person sports team back then, which is unheard of in a market that size. And so predictably, even though I was working part-time, I got laid off. But someone had seen me at a Nick Saban press conference at Alabama and saw how hard I worked and listened to the questions that I asked. And so I was really lucky in that an opening happened in Birmingham. And so after getting laid off from Montgomery, I actually moved on to Birmingham. And that was where I got to cover the Cam Newton National Championship for the University of Auburn, which was an incredible experience. And then after that, just kind of bebopping around. I went from there to Portland, Oregon, Seattle, Oregon. That also was a move that was combined for my husband and I. His company got into an entrepreneurial incubator program in Seattle. So we moved to the Northeast, and I started working for Comcast Sportsnet Northwest, excuse me. Mm-hmm. And the only pro team that they had in Portland that was based out of Portland was the Portland Trailblazers. So that's how I got into the NBA. And then that is how Comcast Sportsnet New England saw me. And that's how I ended up in Boston. So
wow, you've been
route. Yes.
All over the map. All over the map. You've lived everywhere. Yeah, done everything. But that's I love how you kept saying this is why I got this opportunity, because I think in this industry, it is so important to point those out where it's okay to get somewhere because of being a woman or who you are, or somebody saw you, or you used your network, because in every single career field that you go in, I feel like people do use that. So it's important to put it out there and be transparent. But it seems like you're really proud of that. And I like that, like being a woman, being in this industry and using it as a benefit. Do you think it's been a benefit to you more than maybe a hindrance at times than being a woman?
I mean, yes, absolutely. In this business, it is a double-edged sword that you cannot avoid.
Absolutely.
But it is absolutely, I understand that as a reason that I've gotten a lot of the opportunities that I have. There was at one point, and I'll be totally honest with you, when I went on my second maternity leave, the person who was in charge of NBC Sports Boston wouldn't allow a man to do the sideline role. He saw it as a female role. And so they then put a female in there. Whereas for my first one, we were under different leadership, and we kind of filled and piecemealed with Chris Mannix and Chris Forsberg and whoever was there. And so that was really interesting to me. So I no doubt have gotten different opportunities because I am a woman, but then there are also glass ceilings, limitations, and perspectives that maybe people put on you that aren't necessarily real, but because people in power have those.
Yeah.
Exists. Also, I mean, my first on-air job in Alabama, and this is not looking for sympathy or anything, but carrying this huge camera, this whole editing system. You're a one-man band, and this was before the tiny cameras, and we could record everything on our phone. And so, it was both being down south. People were like, "Oh, what are you doing here, honey? Can I help you out, sweetheart?" Or getting catcalled on the sidelines. Those days, it didn't feel great being a woman in this industry, but they are realities, and they are parts of the business that I unfortunately think that every woman has to deal with, and are still issues that are going on. So I am really grateful and thankful to be where I am, and for everyone who has believed in me up to this point. But yeah, I would say that I understand the realities of the business of being a woman, and then also that we are held to a different standard. And that's something that I actually have come to appreciate, because it makes me better at what I'm doing every day.
Very well said. I love everything you touched on with that. And you mentioned going on maternity leave. You have 2 beautiful children that you rave about. Were you nervous about becoming a mother in this industry? What was your journey into motherhood while also being a face of a network? What was that journey like for you?
Oh, Hannah, that's a good question. It's a great question. And I think that it's something that every woman in our business, and every woman in business, every professional woman still deals with.
Yes.
And it's the answer that the reality, there is no right time to have a baby. My 2 children were born at the absolute worst time of an NBA season. Both have Christmas birthdays. My daughter, poor thing, her birthday is Christmas Eve. And so anybody who knows anything about the NBA calendar, that is right in the middle, in the thick of it. It actually worked out. So, I was lucky enough to get 3 months maternity leave, but both times I was able to come back just in time for the start of playoffs. And so to be able to have that to look forward to, and then also be able to jump right back in was really, I think, something that was helpful for me as a professional and as a new mom, like something to look forward to and something to get back to that I felt confident in and that I knew about, and not all this craziness that was going on at home. But I wouldn't say that I was nervous. I will tell you, the first pregnancy, I didn't really talk about it on air. I didn't discuss it. It's not that I was hiding it, but it wasn't something that I was trying to flaunt. And it's just because I didn't know how people would take it. And what's interesting is I remember I was 8 months pregnant, Hannah, and my face does change, but really, you only see me on camera for sidelines from here up, about what you're seeing on Zoom now. And my husband went to, there's a pizza parlor right across the street from TD Garden. And he was sitting in a booth and he heard people talking and he said, yeah, I think I heard Abby Chin was pregnant, maybe. She looks a little different. What's weird? And I was super pregnant. Anybody who had been to a game, like I wasn't wearing muumuus, you could totally tell. And he was just laughing to himself, like, yeah, she's like due tomorrow. What do you? And so it's just kind of a reminder that fans are really passionate and into the game. And it's just, they're not worried about me so much and my appearance and what I'm doing. They are focused on the basketball, and that's good. That's a good thing, and that's what's important.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, obviously having a baby is, and all of that is important. But so I was nervous, but the best thing that happened to me with that first pregnancy is I went into my boss. He was the general manager of the station at the time, and he told me, he looked me right in the eye and he said, Abby, I know that this feels like a really big job, and it is, but you work for a regional television network. You're not curing cancer. People are not going to die. Go have this baby. Don't be stressed. Don't worry. Everything will be here when you get back. And that was a wonderful thing for me to hear and a wonderful perspective to have. And I'm just so grateful that he had that and said that to me.
That's good. That makes me feel really good about being a woman and wanting to be a mother, and that being somebody's dream, that there are people in charge that are supporting you in that way. And I guess giving you the reassurance that everything's going to be here when you get back, because that has to be in the back of your mind at times.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no escaping that. And it still is there. I don't know if that ever goes away. And I don't know if that is a me thing, or if that is a women in broadcasting thing, or if that is a broadcasting industry in general thing. So I can honestly say that hasn't gone away. I don't know if that ever goes away. But I'm just so grateful that I was given that opportunity, and that I have been able to kind of balance both.
How do you balance both? Being a mother of two and covering, there are a lot of basketball games that are played throughout an NBA season, and you travel as well. So how do you manage being a mom with this insane NBA schedule? I mean, you have to just be an absolute rock star.
Thank you. The number one thing is I have a great support system. Obviously, I wouldn't be able to do this if it weren't for my husband. But living in Boston, and my family, my parents are in Florida and Ohio. My husband's family is in Kansas. So we don't have any family in town. I do make a lot of calls, and when the schedule comes out, I call both of my parents and say, which trips do you want? I try to have some backup here when there are longer trips. I use that word balance because it's never balanced. There's always something that's off, and places where you feel like you aren't able to give 100%. But I think that that's real life.
Right.
And so what I love about what I get to do is that I do work mostly nights. And so a lot of the days I am home. On a typical game day, at home, I do go to shoot around and then come back and kind of prepare my notes and go through everything and get ready and then go to the game. But when my kids are in school now, but when my kids were younger with Mabel, that first year or two, I feel like I spent more time with her than a lot of mothers do get who work from 9 to 5, because I see that with my husband and his job, and he's there for breakfast and school drop off and then pick up and afterwards. But on those days, and then the days when I'm home and I'm not traveling, I'm there and I'm 100% in, and I try to be as dialed in as possible. But Hannah, it's a grind.
Yes.
and trying to keep all of it in my head. And it's one of the reasons why I really love watching other women navigate that journey. Cassidy Hubbard at ESPN, I look up to so much and love her. She's wonderful. And get a chance to spend a time with her. But also then whenever I do run into other moms out there, we just kind of get together and talk like, how do you handle this? What are you doing for childcare? What do you do here? And it's such a wonderful community that I didn't know was out there, and I'm so grateful to have. So I would say
so cool.
It's a balance, but it's been a really rewarding experience.
It's so good to know it's possible. I think that's so important to share stories like you being so transparent about it, because I think so many women get so nervous about it, but it's able to be done. You can be a mother, you can have your dream job and do everything, but it will be a grind, but you've never been afraid of working hard. And like you said, the Portland Trailblazers were your first start in NBA. You've been a trailblazer in women in the NBA, being here for so long and being a face. And now more than anything, I think the NBA, more than any other professional league, has the most females in front of the camera in legitimate roles. Like you talk about the Andrews sisters, Andrea Carter, Taylor Rooks, and then Cassidy Hubbard, the Doris Burke. These are women playing, prominent roles in this entire broadcast that goes on from day to day. So how cool has it been to see the transition of the NBA to being very female dominated?
It's been awesome. It's one of the reasons I really love being associated with the NBA, because I do view it as the most progressive sport in professional sports in America. And while not everything is perfect all the time, I do believe the intentions are good, and they are trying to continue to push the envelope forward in the best possible ways. And you just listed off a murderer's row there, Hannah, and some of these women who I am so lucky to call colleagues, friends, whatever you want to say, someone who I can reach out to when I do have questions or and struggling with something. And so I threw out Sarah Kustok. She is the real trailblazer going, I mean, as the first full-time analyst on an NBA broadcast. And she is amazing. She's been nothing but warm and welcoming and helpful to me. And that's just something that I mentioned. I love the NBA community, and I love it's even a broadcasting community. And I know that a lot of it I feel like the next generation, and at least the women that I have met, it's not some like dog eat dog where everyone is out for themselves and it's just a matter of, who can get there first. And it really, to me, feels a lot more welcoming and warm and supportive. And I'm really grateful for that.
I love that. I love watching and turning on the NBA and seeing so many females front and center. You even turned on the draft and it was female led, and it's so cool and so important to be able to see that, and women from all backgrounds as well being represented. But the Celtics have you, and they can be so proud of the work that you do on the sidelines and how successful you've been. I want to get into talking about the Boston Celtics and a little bit of basketball with you because of the season that the Celtics had, and it didn't seem like it was going to start off as strong as it might have. I mean, Joe Mazzulla having to be elevated into the head coaching position in the beginning of the season. What were some of the nerves surrounding that right away, and that mystery of who's going to lead this team this season?
Oh my gosh, that was such a crazy time. And it's kind of like the pandemic. I think I've blocked it out. I remember late on a Wednesday night, the first tweet dropped that something was going on with Ime Udoka. And I was sitting on the couch and like, what's happening? Texting everyone I knew. And then the fact that he was out, and then Joe Mazzulla was in, going to media day, I mean, days before the season started, and going to media day, which I don't know if people who don't follow the NBA regularly, before every season there's a media day. It's where all of the players put on their jerseys for the first time and get pictures taken, and they get all of the shots that you need that go on the Jumbotron and that kind of stuff. And we use it for our broadcast on NBC Sports Boston, but it's also the media's first time to talk to these guys heading into the season. And there was just such a dark cloud hovering over the entire thing. And it just felt so weird because we hadn't talked to the players since any of this happened. A lot of the guys were super close with Ime Udoka and had gotten there over that year. And they had gotten what felt like over that hump in their first NBA finals run together as a group. And so it was just so strange. But from the first conversation that I had with Joe Mazzulla, it gave me confidence. He was not intimidated he didn't seem overwhelmed in any way. He was like, yeah, I got this. I'm really excited. This is the opportunity that I've been working for, waiting for, and I'm ready to go. And the Celtics got off to such a great start. I mean, driven really, I think, by the disappointment of the last season, and then also understanding that they've got to galvanize. They have got to come together if they are going to achieve this goal, because Ime's not coming back. And so it was really cool to see at the beginning of the season, the end of the season, and that playoff run. I'm going to go back to the word. It just felt like a grind. The year before that, it felt so almost serendipitous. You knew that team had talent, but the way that they turned that season around, starting in January, after the tumultuous start that they had, it all just felt like icing on the cake. Whereas this run, the expectations were, it was NBA Finals or bust, and so everything just felt like no matter what, it was harder than it should have been. It was more disappointing than it should have been. You didn't win the right way, and so it just felt so much heavier and so much more of a grind. And that when the season came to an end, it almost felt merciful. So
Yeah.
It's so, and it's one of the reasons why I love this job. And you talk about, I've been there in a decade. No season has been the same. My first year was Brad Stevens' first year, and that team won 25 games. And that was the year that they had Gerald Wallace, Chris Humphreys was on that team. Avery Bradley was the starting point guard. Chris Rajon Rondo was still coming back from the knee injury. And so it's just crazy to think how many different iterations that this team has been through since then. And it's one of the great things about being in Boston is that it's an NBA championship. They're working for banner number 18, no matter who's on the team, no matter who's coaching, no matter what happened 3 days before training camp. The goal is to win a championship, and anything less is a disappointment, is a failure.
It was so cool to see that despite the woes of what was happening in the beginning of the season, that this team had the best regular season record in 13 years, their 5th ECF appearance in 7 years. When do you think this team really started to gel and become a monster that they were?
I think this season ago, and that group, while some minor tweaks were made from adding Malcolm Brogdon to increasing the playing time and the impact of Derek White, this group knows they had it, knew that they were the most talented team in the NBA. And so for better or for worse, that was something that I think we saw at the beginning of the season. And there was a West Coast road trip where they beat the Phoenix Suns, who were thought to be the top team in the West at the time. That was, also 2 iterations ago from them before they got KD and all that. And they beat them by 40, and it wasn't even close to being a game. And that was something that I think was good and bad, and that giving them the confidence, but also then made them feel like they could just show up and play. And that's not something that you can do in the NBA. So I think that that's one of the things that made this offseason and the Marcus Smart trade so difficult, is that core group of Marcus, Jason, and Jalen have been together for so long. And I just have absolutely no idea what to expect without Marcus Smart. He was, as everyone said, the heart and soul of that team. He's also the voice. He was the guy who spoke up no matter what the situation was, and spoke truthfully and honestly with candor. And so I, as a journalist and as a sideline reporter, am going to miss that so much.
Yeah, that's going to be really interesting. I'm glad you kind of said you really have no idea, because when you lose a guy who, there's Jalen, Jason, and Marcus, that was the foundation. So without a doubt, no matter what was going to happen with the Celtics this offseason, they felt like they had that foundation. Now that that's a missing link to it, where do you think you could see Jason and Jalen possibly stepping up to fill more of a void when he's not there?
And that's what this move does, is it forces them to take over this team. And it's, to me, it's more of in the locker room, the leadership role, and being the ones to step up and hold guys accountable while also holding themselves accountable, looking in the mirror and seeing where they need to grow. And from the moment that Brad stepped down and stepped into that role of president of basketball operations, Brad Stevens, they have done that. And I think that this is a show of confidence in those two, that Brad believes they can do more and they can be not that they already weren't, but they've now officially been thrust in this role where this is your team. It's on no one else. It is you two, and we believe you're ready for it. I believe you can handle this. And from what I've seen from Jason and Jalen in their time in Boston, I believe in them too. So I'm excited for them in this challenge and excited to see how they are able to grow into those roles.
Growing into a role, but growing into the player he is today. Let's talk about Jason Tatum. Been there since what, like 2009, 2010 season. How have you seen him grow from a young rookie stepping into the dynamic, well-known NBA athlete that he is today?
It's so funny. It's like one of your kids. You forget that baby stage or what they were like when he really was he was 19 coming into the league and such a talent who could get a bucket. I mean, from the moment he stepped on the floor, but to the man, the player that he has grown into now, it's been really cool to see. And I think with Jason, you can't not say, and the father that he is to Deuce as well, and just the kind of presence that has. Jason is, I think he's unique at the NBA because he has, from that first year, he's had Deuce. And so he's had to kind of be more mature than I think you would think of as a 19-year-old coming into the NBA. And that has shown. But the development in his game and the development, how far he has come as a leader on this team. And I know he still has a long way to go, but for so long we would ask, I just remember asking Al Horford about it. And, he said, Jason leads in his own way. He's a leader by example. And that is something that is important to the team. But now he's being asked to step out of that comfort zone. And he has met that challenge. And it's still something that I think is not natural to him, but it's something that it's a challenge that he has embraced and is working really hard to do and is doing it in the best way that he knows how. And I think it's been really cool to watch. And we forget, we started this whole conversation talking about that I've been here for a decade. It is just so crazy to think that how far and how different he is from that moment on draft night to now.
It's going to be so cool to see him then pushed into a role. And sometimes, the greatest players rise and surpass expectations. So I'm very excited to see him being forced to be something different, being pushed into a role and seeing how he can rise to that occasion. So that will be very exciting for Boston Celtics fans and NBA fans to kind of tune in on as a storyline this season. But let's talk about the playoffs a little bit. You've covered playoff runs in the past, but this one in particular felt like the Boston Celtics had it in the bag in the beginning of the playoffs. Everyone was riding very high on them. Was there more of a shock factor? What was it like when they did get handed the loss and had to handle that feeling?
Game 7 was awful against the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals, only because they worked so hard to get back to that point. And so the feeling was you really hoped that they had just enough left to get back to the NBA Finals. I don't think, to me, I was more surprised when they were facing elimination in the second round against the Philadelphia 76ers. In my mind, and the Celtics have been to the Eastern Conference Finals 4 of the last 6 years. And to me, it was a foregone conclusion. It was Eastern Conference Finals at the very least. So then to be in the second round and be in that position, I just remember telling people, like, my kids are in school for another month. What are we doing? Like, I want to keep working. Let's go. But
yep.
I was not mentally prepared for the season to end. But that's something that I mentioned earlier. It just felt like this playoff run was different from a season ago, and that it was more of a slog. And no matter, even though, they beat the Atlanta Hawks, it should have taken 4 games instead of 6. And so then that just puts more wear and tear on you and the mental part of that as well, because the playoffs and the focus that has to be maintained for, 2 to 3 months if you're going to go all the way to the NBA Finals is just an incredible toll. And so, and then in the second round, so I think I talked about it earlier, it just felt so much harder this time around. And no one was really, it didn't feel like there was a lot of joy in this run. And I don't know what to chalk that up to, how to explain that. There were, in the run a season ago, there were so many surprising moments, from Grant Williams coming through in a game 7, hitting 7 threes, Al Horford and his dunk over Giannis. There were so many of those moments, those iconic moments that you look back on and brought so much joy. This playoff run was just kind of like, we got to get this done. We need to keep going. We're supposed to be here. Everyone is expecting us to do all these great things. And so it just felt like there was a lot more pressure. I will say the guys in that building, no one is putting more pressure on them than themselves. And I think that that's something also that has to be, it's challenging. It's not easy, to have all of these expectations. And Hannah, you and I can speak to this, someone who is in a forward facing role, and you have all of these eyes on you and everyone expecting you to do well. And like you said, Jason has absolutely risen to almost every challenge that's put in front of him. So has Jaylen Brown. But, we're human. They're human. And unfortunately, the season ended sooner than they would have liked.
To extend the season next year, now without Marcus Smart, like you had talked about, but then you look at the draft, only adding really one key piece. How are the Boston Celtics structuring themselves to make it all the way next year? Because I feel like there's a little bit of a question mark surrounding it right now.
Well, you could argue with the Kristaps Porzingis addition that they actually added more talent to this team. It's just what you lose in a Marcus Smart. And without seeing them in a practice, without seeing a game being played, I'm still there and still coming to grips with that. I'm really interested to see. I mean, the thing with Brad Stevens is the basketball is not a question. I have to trust. We used to say that a lot in Trader Danny Ainge, you trust, but I have to trust in Brad Stevens and his basketball knowledge to believe that he thinks that Kristaps Porzingis is a piece that is going to move this team forward. And he is coming off the best season of his career. He is in his prime at 28 years old and has full command over his body and his game. And so I'm excited to see what that looks like alongside the Jays. There's no question that the front court needed something more. Rob Williams, and we all know his injury history, and then Al Horford just turned 37. He's not getting younger. While he is doing incredible things at his age and experience level, it's just not for an 82 game slog and then going through the playoffs as well. You needed more depth. And so I'm really excited to see Kristaps out there playing alongside Jaylen and Jason, and the fact that he can stretch the floor while also protecting the rim and creating a different presence there. But I want to see it. And we haven't gotten a chance to do that yet.
Like a fresh face, right? You wipe off the old makeup, you put on the new, and we're ready to go. We've got a whole makeover here coming, but you've always got your foundation that you're secure with. So that will be my makeup basketball analogy for the day, ladies and gentlemen. But
well done. I really enjoyed that. It's true.
That one just came off the tongue there. It was perfect. But no, I'm very excited to see the Celtics this year, and just paying attention to basketball this past year has been interesting in general, because you do have a lot of these guys like the LeBron James and the Steph Currys, guys who have been here for so long, doing so great. And then you're seeing these new faces come in and what the Mavericks are doing. And there's just such a fun feel to basketball right now. And who's going to be that next one? Wemby could be that next one. This 7'5" giant, his hands, I don't know if you saw around the baseball, made it look like he was holding a ping pong ball. In his NBA rookie season, what are you most looking forward to, just as a basketball fan, to see this guy on the court?
Well, Hannah, just hearing you talking about that, I mean, that's why I love the NBA so much. And I know sometimes it's hard for fans with all of the player movement, but I mean, there is never a dull moment. And I do love that the players have a say in things, and that they do get to be an entity. But when you look at Victor Wembanyama, I'm going to work on that. But
I think everyone's working on that. That's why I chose to just say Wemby. I love a good nickname. Love a good
like
one-liner.
Giannis Antetokounmpo,
Right.
those early seasons. It's something, and now, he's a household name, so everyone can say it. But with Victor, I mean, he couldn't have ended up in a better place. And you saw that on the draft lottery night, just the look of relief on his face, on everyone in his team, knowing that they're going to the San Antonio Spurs, an organization that has the history of developing, I mean, Hall of Fame big men, and David Robinson and Tim Duncan, and then to be able to work with Pop, who is a Hall of Famer in himself, future Hall of Famer, not there yet. But it's just an incredible situation. And I don't think that I don't like to draw the comparison, but Kristaps Porzingis, when he came into the league, was seen as this unicorn, a guy who could shoot, and but also was great on defense and protecting the rim, and just so smart. And so I really cannot wait to see him out there, what he can do. I think that he's handled everything so well and been so mature, and it's something that we haven't seen from a prospect in a long time. But there's going to be so many eyes on him, and so many expectations. I hope that he does get to, I don't know, experience and actually, and Pop will help him with that. But the joy of this exciting new time in his life versus feeling any sort of pressure or disappointment that he has to be this all-star in his rookie season.
Yeah, I think he's just going to look good out there regardless for how big he is. He should be able to have some double-digit games to just get himself, into the groove of the NBA. But it's been so fun to watch that storyline unfold. And when these guys are so young, too, it's really cool to see the spotlight on them and get to see all
well he's handling everything. I mean, he seems like nothing can fluster him. He loves dealing with the media, which, it's not natural to a lot of people. And dealing with all of these expectations, I think he could be great, obviously.
That's half the battle, right? Coming in as a professional and dealing with all of that type of things and the mental aspect of it. It seems like he's pretty on a straight and narrow with that.
Yes, which can't be easy.
No.
And I mean, I can't imagine doing it as a teenager, having all of those cameras shoved in your face and being able to say the right thing. I mean, I struggle with that now. So
yeah, absolutely. Someone else who has pressure on them, the U.S. women's national team. I know you mentioned you played soccer, and I did as well growing up. And so a lot of these women I'm seeing come together now and are headed to the World Cup very soon. Is this something that's still a sport you like to follow, or an excitement surrounding these women coming up?
Absolutely. And I'm really trying to get my 7-year-old daughter into soccer.
Love this.
Both of my husband grew up playing sports. My husband and I grew up playing sports. We're like super competitive at heart, and she just is not there yet. And so we will be watching every single game. It will be on my TV, no matter what countries are playing, just kind of trying to get her mind wrapped around in the game. And it's like you said before, I mean, representation matters. Her just seeing that, her seeing women in those positions, and is huge. We watched the NCAA championship for women, and just the lead up. My daughter was like, "Are they ever going to get to the game? This feels like a basketball game," because they had, all of the lineups and the pregame show and all of that, and it was great that was happening for the women's game. And
put them on full display, front and center. Yeah.
And she loved watching the national anthem, who was sung by I can't remember who did it, but it was a woman, and she was just like taken aback by that. And so when you see that look on her face and in her eyes, and to see that that's possible and to get excited about that, that's what brings me so much joy and excitement and inspiration to continue to do this, and to then also continue to support and find ways to push women in this industry and women in sports forward, because I think that's so important and something that is still lacking. And I'll tell you, so coming out of the pandemic, it was 3 years ago, Kemba Walker had just signed with the New York Knicks. Mm-hmm. And so it was the first big press conference that I had been in since the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And it's covering the New York Knicks, a premier franchise in the NBA. And there are about 50 people in this room, and I was the only woman. And looking around, it was 2020. What is that? It was 2022 or 2021, one of those two. But what is time after the pandemic? I
Yeah,
lost
what
track.
is it?
It was 2021, and I was the only female in this room covering a premier franchise in the NBA. I was flabbergasted. I couldn't believe it. And so I have really tried to find ways and be intentional about doing more and reaching out to more women in the industry, but then also just trying to make myself available, because that's how does that happen? I don't understand how that happens. And if it wasn't Kemba Walker, if it wasn't the fact that the Celtics were opening the season against them, there wouldn't have been a single woman in there. And so it's just women. I want women to know that these jobs are out there, and to not be intimidated, to own your space, to know your value, and understand that it's important for us to be there. And we bring a different perspective and diversity and things that some people may not see, but I just think are invaluable.
I always say that when people ask me, like, I'm sure you have a lot of bumps in the road being a woman. And I said, yes, but I feel like I've had so many benefits being a woman, because there's so many questions or situations that I can be in and I can ask in a space because I'm a woman. So I have to bring that to the forefront and focus more on that than the things that are holding me back as a woman in this industry. And so I'm glad you pointed that out. But it's crazy to think you're the only woman. And we had just talked so much about the NBA being so forward with having all these women, but also there is still, no matter how many you see, there's still a depleting factor in that as well. So important that you pointed that out, and thankful that you're in that room, and not just in that space. I know you're making an impact. I mean, you literally said you got a job because of being in a press conference and asking the right questions and owning your space. So I'm so proud of you for that. Thank you for being on here. It's been an honor and pleasure to get to know you. And before you go, I have two last questions for you. One, because I'm so fascinated by this as a broadcaster, this has to be everyone's dream to cover the Olympics in some aspect. Your coolest part about broadcasting ski jumping, and most challenging part about ski jumping in the Olympics. Because I'm sure there wasn't much. Did you know about ski jumping before going into broadcasting the Olympics?
Like you said, any broadcaster, I grew up watching the Olympics. I loved the Olympics every 4 years. And I mean, now it's every 2, but it was awesome. And so I've watched ski jumping, in the Olympics. But yes, it was crazy having to learn 3 new sports, not just ski jumping, but it was Nordic combined and then cross country skiing, which is Nordic combined is the combination of ski jumping and cross country skiing, which is currently not an Olympic sport for women, which is kind of messed up. But it was really interesting. It was different covering a sport that Americans aren't really good at. And so the stars of the sport are international people. The coolest part about covering, there were 2 experiences that I will never forget. One was covering the first gold medal by Americans in cross country, and getting to talk to Keegan Randall and Jessie Diggins after they won that medal and 2 women, and the way they won it, and the fact that they were there together, did it as a team, and had been there for each other through so much, and watching their team grow and each other grow. It was incredible. And like, I know that we're journalists and there's no cheering in the press box, but it's different. There's a different element when it's the Olympics and it's Team USA, and then the fact that it was women doing this for the first time ever. It was emotional, and luckily the way the Olympics work, there was enough time for me to pull it together before the interview, but it was just such a cool experience. And the other thing is that NBC, and this is kind of inside sports, but they pay so much money. So you are the very first, it's called a mix zone, and all of the athletes have to walk through the mix zone before they can leave the stadium. And you are the very first spot, and you have right of refusal for every athlete. And so it's really cool because, to have that kind of access. And then also going from the NBA, where pre-pandemic, players and coaches had to talk to you basically 3 times a day, and they're so sick of seeing your face after 82 games preseason, and then you got to go to the playoffs. But so the Olympics, people want to talk to you, and that's the access is different. And so that was really fun and exciting, and an experience that I'll never forget, but it was awesome.
I love the way you gloat about it. I had to ask that just as a last little rapid fire question because I think it's so fascinating and such a cool little niche sport to be able to cover, and to hear you had that experience just makes me so happy. And it is, Olympics is such a unifying time. But something else is going to be coming up here soon. We have lots to celebrate in the summer. You're going to be preparing for another season of basketball before you even know it. So we're going to get your music playlist right, okay? We have a playlist here on Beers with Mears called Beers with Mears Guest Playlist on Spotify. Every one of our guests, from Jay Billis to Ryan Clark to now Abby Chin and everyone in between, has added 2 or 3 songs to this playlist that either help them get the party started, or that you'd want to put on to have a good environment to drink to, or just your 3 favorite songs you'd want to add to our playlist. What would they be?
Oh God, Hannah, I wish you would have told me this was coming right now.
It's even better to see the panic on everybody's faces. Don't tell them. So maybe that's just part on me, but
right now my entire Spotify list, and my husband hates it because our family Spotify list is just trash, but it's the new Little Mermaid, Part of Your World, and like, Kids Bop. No, so that's not it.
Let's add it. Let's switch it up.
But to get going and to get excited, loving Lizzo. I mean, anything by Lizzo, obviously.
Perfect.
Come Down is there for me. Selena Gomez and them.
I loved that one when it came out. I was like, oh, this one, like every time it came out in the car, I couldn't skip it. It was one of those no.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like it's still at the top of the playlist. And then so cliche, Taylor Swift, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm still in my Lavender Haze phase. Yes. That was my go-to during the season. I don't know. Is that good enough? Lizzo.
Absolutely.
Taylor.
We got Lizzo, Selena. We got all girl power on this being added to the playlist. So I absolutely love it. And by recency bias, of course, we have to add some Taylor Swift, right? That's only appropriate.
Yes. I actually really lobbied hard. I hosted this thing for the Celtics, and one of their partners is Ticketmaster, and I went straight up to that woman and I was like, I know Taylor has expanded to Europe and I would like to get in on that because I could not make the Foxborough shows, and plus it was raining. So she laughed in my face, but it's still out there. It's still a possibility.
Everybody get Abby Chin to see Taylor Swift in Europe. Get her everywhere. Get her international. We will have her interviewing Taylor Swift on stage is what we will have. That will be, yes.
I know. Hannah, that is one of my, not a regret, but this season, the Royals came to a Celtics game, Prince William and Princess Kate. And I got to sit it was kind of, it was the Royals. So no one actually got to talk to them. There was no way that we could have interviewed them or anything, but I did get to sit, 2 feet diagonally behind her as the crow flies. And I was just staring the entire time. And so much so my producer was like, Abby, what do you, and I'm like, what? Who? He's right there. Are you guys getting this? Because it was the only, obviously it was the only thing we were showing.
Was she just so put together, and she just never looks like she even has a strand of hair out of place? No, and she was so skinny. That was the thing that got me. Her waist is like this big. I don't think I'm on my way, but I think this is after 10 p.m. This is what I'm doing. Glad somebody's doing it for us. Awesome. Right. That's what brings me joy right now. So that's okay. It's, yes, she was absolutely put together. And their life is just so interesting to me. And so they sat next to Celtics ownership. They also sat next to the governor for a little while to live that life and have to go make small talk with all of these strangers, but people in power. It would be so interesting and exhausting all at the same time. Okay, so let's get Abby to Taylor Swift VIP and to the castle to meet the royal family. Okay. Yeah, to Buckingham Palace. Let's go to the palace. I love it. Yeah. I love it. Abby, thank you so much. You were a fantastic guest. It's been great to get to know you as a female in this industry, but also just to see you as a mother, as a woman, really paving the way for the rest of us. Thank you for coming on Beers with Mears. Enjoy the rest of your summer and best of luck as the Celtics turn a new chapter next season. Thank you for having me. And yes, whenever you do get to Boston, let's go to a rooftop. I'm here for it. Let's have a Beers with Mears on the rooftop. Absolutely. Let's go.